Part 25. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 241. I took advantage of the situation and asked, "What can I do?" Lin Duyan replied, "Since the cave god side can't do it, then let's start with the Luohua cave girl." After hearing this sentence, I suddenly had a bad feeling in my heart. Lin Duyan opened his eyes and said word by word, "When you get married to the Luohua cave girl, the cave god will definitely not let you go, so we can take the opportunity to let the cave god bear the thunder for this little girl." The corner of my mouth twitched slightly. Why are these two methods inseparable from the word marriage? I was about to speak, but was interrupted by Huashiu again. "No. You can't be sacrificed because of me. Besides, if you really marry the Luohuadong girl, Tianxian." Huashiu was slightly stunned, and quickly reached out his hand to hold his mouth. "Tianxian what?" Huashiu's expression became a little embarrassed. He turned his face to one side and whispered, "It's nothing." I discovered that Huashiu is really not good at lying. Lin Duyan was a little dissatisfied after hearing Huashiu's words, and said, "This won't work." "That won't work either. If it weren't for brother Long Lin's sake, I wouldn't get involved in your affairs." Seeing Lin Duyan getting angry, I quickly stepped forward and said with a smile, okay, just use the second method, just use the second method." After hearing these words, Lin Duyan's expression softened a little. After that, we discussed how to get married to the Luohua cave girl. Lin Duyan said that there are two situations when a woman falls into a cave. The first is that after a woman falls into a cave, she will become obsessed with the cave god and think about the cave god day and night until she finally becomes lovesick and dies of depression. After death, the woman will come to the cave beside God. The second is that a woman maintains her true nature and does not admire the cave god. Such women often become demented and crazy, and eventually die. If it is the first case, the villagers will regard the cave girl as a god and serve her with delicious food and drink, hoping that the cave girl will bring good weather to the village after her death. The second situation is very tragic. The villagers show their violent side and beat and kick the cave girl, but they will not kill the cave girl because the village still needs 100 people. Lin Duyan looked at me and said, "So you want to marry the cave girl?" The people in the village are eager to agree, because in this way, they can get rid of a disaster star, and the number of people will not be broken. Lin Duyan pondered for a moment and continued, "If there is any punishment from the cave god, it will only fall on you. After all, you are an outsider." After listening, I nodded. "This is the only way right now." Lin Duyan stood up and smiled at me, "Don't worry about your marriage to the cave girl. I will take care of it for you. As for the natural calamity of this little girl, we need to wait until you get married." I thanked Lin Duyan and planned to leave. Before leaving, Zhang Xi suddenly stopped, turned around, and asked Lin Duyan word by word, "I wonder if you know the whereabouts of Li Leize." Lin Duyan froze, turned his head and said, "My junior brother. He is already gone." When saying this, Lin Duyan looked a little sad. Zhang Xi said nothing more and left with me. On the way back to the village, Zhang Xi was silent, lost in thought. I asked, "What did you notice?" Zhang Xi raised his head, looked at me and said, "This one-eyed man is lying. There is no way Li Leize will die." Zhang Xi still firmly believes in his idea, and I am not convinced. This Lin Duyan seems to be thinking about me wholeheartedly. No. I have to walk around the village. Look for Li Leize. With that said, Zhang Xi parted ways with me. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 242. I looked at Zhang Xi's leaving figure and shouted, "Be safe." Zhang Xi waved to me and said back, "I got it." Huashiu was walking beside me holding a red oil paper umbrella. She suddenly said, "Actually, You don't need to do this for me. I shrugged indifferently and said, what's the matter? You are my sister, so I naturally want to help you. After all, I brought you a bad experience in the last life. I should always find a way to make up for it in this life. After hearing this, Huashiu stopped and I looked back at her. She opened her beautiful eyes, looked at me quietly, said no need, and then quickly left me. I looked at Huashiu's leaving figure and smiled helplessly. Back to the old man's stilted building, the old man didn't know where he went. After a while, there were bursts of noisy sounds outside the stilted building. I came to the window and looked outside, and saw a dense crowd of people crowded at the door. Everyone's face was filled with joy. At this moment, the door of the Diagialo was pushed open and the old man walked in. Young man, I heard that you are going to marry the Luahua cave girl. I have to say that Lin Duyan's efficiency in doing things is really fast. It didn't take long for the whole village to know about this matter. Immediately afterwards, the door of the stilted building was pushed open again, and an old man with silver hair and a cane walked in. When the old man saw it, he quickly stepped forward to help him, looking very respectful. The gray-haired old man stood in front of me and said, young man, I am the village chief of Baki village. I heard that you want to marry the Luahuadong girl. The old man's status should be very high in the village, otherwise it would not be possible for the old man to respect him so much. Just when I was about to answer, the old man interrupted. When he passed by the cave last night, he saw the cave girl. The old village chief looked at me in surprise and asked, is this true? I nodded and replied, yes, since I saw the Luahua cave girl last night, her figure has been lingering in my mind for a long time. I am willing to marry her. I am willing to stay in Baki village. As soon as these words came out, the old village chief immediately beamed. Okay, okay. Although the cave girl is a little delirious now, she will return to normal after you marry her, and then you can live a good life in the village. The old village chief stood up and said to the old man, without further delay, let's go and organize the wedding right away. After that, the old village chief left with the old man. I came to the window and looked at the crowds of people outside, and I fell into deep thought. The villagers of Baki village have to be careful. The fact that these guys are so anxious to hold a wedding shows everything. They want to keep me here completely. At this moment, I suddenly saw a familiar figure in the crowd. That figure actually looks a bit like the driver who brought us here. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, but the figure had disappeared. Did I see it wrong? The door of the stilted building was pushed open again, and this time a pair of women came. Both of them are wearing traditional Miao costumes. The man is shiny and full of energy, while the woman looks gloomy and haggard. The man laughed and came to my side. He stretched out his hand and patted my shoulder and said, that's right. The young man is very energetic. It's more than enough to marry our Xiaoluan. Are you right, the mother of the child? The woman was slightly stunned and nodded. The identity of the two people could not be clearer, that is, Dongnu's parents. I greeted the two of them politely, and Dongnu's father was talking in my ear, praising his daughter. No matter what, don't look at her daughter's stupidity now, she is absolutely as beautiful as a fairy when dressed up. I just nodded in agreement. Just as the man was saying these words enthusiastically, someone outside suddenly called the man out. When the woman saw her husband leaving, she rushed to me like crazy and grabbed my arm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 243. The woman's grip was so strong that I frowned. Please. Please take Xiaoluan out of here. This is no place for people. This is hell. This is hell. The woman's voice was hoarse and she kept begging me. Calm down, I quickly comforted the woman. If you have anything to say, let's sit down and talk. The woman glanced in the direction of the door in panic and continued to plead, please, take her away. Take her away. I wanted to ask something else, but the door was pushed open and the man walked in. The woman quickly let go of my hand and sat back down. Although the woman tried her best to look normal, the man still noticed something strange. He came to the woman and pulled her up. The woman trembled all over and her eyes were full of fear. The man laughed at me and said, Uncle, Xiaoluan's mother is just like Xiaoluan. She has some mental problems. No matter what she says to you, don't take it to heart. With that said, he took the woman and left the stilted building. I quickly came to the window and looked at the backs of the two people leaving. The man who came out of the Diagialo seemed to have changed his appearance. He looked fierce. He grabbed his daughter's hair and pulled it forward hard. The woman did not dare to say a word. Seeing this scene, my heart became heavier and heavier. What on earth did the girl from Luahua cave go through? In the evening, Lin Duyan came to see me. He first told me some things that I need to pay attention to when getting married. Because you are from outside, the place you chose to marry the cave girl is the ancestral hall in Baki village. Although dead people are enshrined in the ancestral temple, living people can still get married there. Lin Duyan added, before the wedding, you have to go to the cave to retrieve the soul of Luahua cave girl. The purpose of doing this is to tell the cave god that Luahua cave girl is your wife, so that he will bear a grudge against you. Then they will find ways to cause trouble for you. Then we follow the clues and let her block the thunder from the sky for that little girl. I nodded and said nothing. At this moment, the old village chief came over, his face a little ugly. It's bad. The cave girl went crazy in the turret and refused to come out even if she said anything. Lin Duyan looked at me and said, let him go, maybe he can persuade the cave girl to come out. In this way, I came to the blockhouse during the day. Before they even got close, they heard the cave girl's heart-rending screams. No. I don't want it. I don't want to get married. I have someone I like. As they approached the fort, they saw the Luahua cave girl standing on top of the fort, looking like she was about to jump off. The surrounding villagers did not dare to step forward rashly, fearing that this madman would really jump down. The afterglow of the setting sun fell lightly on the cave girl's body. Her hair was messy, her expression was crazy, and she looked like she wanted to eat people. I came under the fort and looked up at her. The moment the cave girl saw me, she immediately became quiet, then sat on the turret and giggled at me. I said to the cave girl, come down. The cave girl shook her head like a rattle, no. If I don't go down, they want me to get married. The cave girl stared at me with her star-like eyes and said, I don't want to get married, I want you to marry me. This sentence made my heart twitch violently. Whether it is the fairy-like cave girl outside the cave or the crazy cave girl now, they all have one thing in common. That is innocence, especially those clear eyes that make it impossible to see any impurities. I got married to the cave girl just for Huashiu. It is precisely because of this that I feel guilty about the cave girl. Come down, the person you want to marry is me. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 244. When the cave girl heard this, she looked happy, ran out of the turret like crazy, and then fell into my arms. She didn't say anything, just raised her head and smiled silly at me. I took the cave girl's hand and came to her parents. After seeing her father, the cave girl showed fear and hid behind me. I said to her, go back with your parents. I will pick you up later. After hearing this, the cave girl jumped up to her parents. So she was brought home by her parents. As the sun set, the cave goddess walked happily on the mountain path, and her sweet singing sounded again. I miss you so much that I don't see you, but I only wish that your heart is like my heart. The singing spread far, far away, and the entire Baiki village was bathed in it. I followed Lin Duyan to the ancestral hall of Baiki village. Although Baiki village is very backward, the ancestral temple is indeed majestic and majestic. It is made of blue bricks and stone tiles and covers an extremely large area. A simple plaque caught my eye. This plaque was bathed in the dusk, with a warm yellow halo inlaid with a layer of gold. The words Miao Ancestral Hall were clearly written on the plaque. These 4 words are like dragons and phoenixes, full of vicissitudes of life. The outside of the ancestral hall is decorated with lanterns and colorful decorations, giving it a cheerful look. Walking inside, the villagers of Baiki village were busy decorating the wedding venue. At this time, I actually saw Zhang Xiai here. Zhang Xiai came to me and winked at me. I understood, and Zhang Xiai and I came to a corner where there was no one. Zhang 11 looked around, and when he was sure that no one was paying attention to the 2 of us, he whispered to me, "Guess who I saw?" I was stunned and asked, "Who?" Zhang Xiai took a deep breath and said word by word, "The taxi driver who brought us here." I frowned. It seemed that I was not wrong during the day. "How is this going?" Zhang Xiai explained, "Didn't I wander around the village blindly? Then I saw the driver under a big tree. The driver seemed to be talking to someone at the time, but I couldn't see the other person from that angle." I nodded and motioned for Zhang Xiai to continue. Then I hid in the dark and paid attention to the driver. About 5 minutes later, the driver left, but I found. Zhang Xiai's voice stopped, and I was a little anxious, so I quickly asked, "What did you find?" "I found out that the driver is a cripple." As soon as these words came out, I looked at Zhang Xiai blankly. "He's a cripple? Still from the village? Isn't that the Lileza we are looking for?" The old man who took us into the village said that Lileza was the only cripple in the whole village. After entering the village, I did not find any cripples. "You mean that driver is Lileza?" Zhang 11 nodded. I gasped. If that was really the case, then the whole thing became clearer. I asked how the driver found us so coincidentally and met the old man after getting off the bus. It turned out that these were all intentional. Then the lame Li you are looking for is not that reliable. Zhang Shi looked a little embarrassed. He waved his hand and said, "How do I know? I just predicted that the trouble you encountered will be solved here. As for Li Leze, my master told me." Zhang 11 sighed and continued, "Tonight, please be more careful. I will pay attention to everything here in the dark. If necessary, I will prophesy again." After that, Zhang Xiai was about to turn around and leave. I quickly took Zhang Xiai's hand and said, "Brother, pay attention to safety." Zhang Xiai was slightly stunned and said, "You too." Soon, night fell, and the team welcoming the bride had gathered outside the ancestral hall. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 245. Outside the ancestral hall, almost half of the village was here. Each of them had a bright smile on their face, as if it wasn't me who was getting married, but them. A bright red sedan chair was placed quietly at the entrance of the ancestral hall, with red silk and satin fluttering in the wind, which looked particularly eye-catching in the night. At this moment, an old lady came over, holding a red wedding dress in her hand. She smiled and handed the wedding dress into my hand and said, "Groom, please put on the wedding dress and go greet the bride." I took the wedding dress and returned to the wedding room. Hua Xiu was sitting at the table. When he saw me coming in, he stood up and said, "Actually, you don't need to do this." I waved my hand and said, "It doesn't matter, it's just a formality. Once your matter is resolved, we will leave here. Coming here actually has another purpose, which is to find another evil spirit. However, I haven't found any trace of the evil spirit yet." I put the wedding clothes on the table. Zifu is bright red like blood, giving the impression that it has been infected with blood. The workmanship is very delicate, with clear lines, and each line is like a slender wicker. Huashiu glanced at the wedding dress and said, "This wedding dress is much inferior to when you got married." I smiled. How could ordinary people compare with the royal nobles? I opened my wedding dress and wanted to put it on, but I found that it was impossible to put it on while wearing my own clothes. I had no choice but to take off my original clothes. Seeing this, Huashiu turned his head to the side. After putting on the wedding clothes, a cold feeling spread throughout my body, and I shuddered subconsciously. Huashiu felt that the time was almost up, turned around, came to me, and thoughtfully tied the buttons on my wedding dress for me. But when Huashiu fastened the third button, her movements stagnated and she let out a sigh. "What's wrong?" Huashiu stretched out his onion finger, pointed at my wedding dress and said, "I just seem to see the threads on my wedding dress moving." "The thread is moving? Isn't this possible?" I asked. Huashiu frowned slightly, shook his head, and replied, "It's very possible that I saw it wrong." At this moment, Lin Duyan's voice came from outside the house, saying, "Boy, it's time to go." I responded, and then walked out of the room with Huashiu. Seeing Huashiu come out, Lin Duyan said, "This little girl can't go." Huashiu's face turned cold, his beautiful eyes widened, and he asked coldly, "Why can't I go?" Huashiu didn't have any good impression of Lin Duyan. Lin Duyan explained, "When you entered the village, the cave god had already taken a liking to you. If you appear in front of him now, wouldn't it mean that you are causing trouble?" Huashiu wanted to insist on her idea, but I interrupted her. I whispered in her ear, "I know you are worried about me. Don't worry, I'm not as weak as you think." Huashiu curled his lips and replied, "I'm not worried about you." I smiled and then said, "Be careful, this village is a bit weird." Huashiu shrugged disapprovingly and said very proudly, "You can rest assured that although I was injured, ordinary people still can't hurt me." I nodded and repeatedly told Huashiu to be careful, then hesitated and took out my phone. "I'm afraid you'll be bored, so I'll leave you my mobile phone. Although there is no signal or electricity here, the single-player games on the mobile phone are enough for you to play for a while." Huashiu happily took the phone. Seeing her like this, I couldn't help but shake my head and smile bitterly. This girl learned all the functions of the mobile phone clearly in less than an hour. Just like that, Lin Duyan and I walked out of the Miao family ancestral hall. He tied a big red flower on my chest, and then I rode towards Dongnu's home, with the wedding procession following behind me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 246. The wedding sedan was swinging leisurely, and the cheerful sound of Suana sounded throughout Beiki village, startling the resting birds in the forest. In the laughter of the villagers, I could not feel any joy. On the contrary, my heart was extremely heavy. Soon, the wedding team arrived at Dong's house. I got off the horse and several old women surrounded me. "Officer Groom, you are here, but the bride refuses to come out. You must come to pick her up." Then, they crowded me to a room. I pushed open the wooden door and walked in. When I walked in, I saw 3 sticks of red wax placed on the table. The dim candlelight added a touch of tenderness to the dark and silent room. The cave girl was wearing a red wedding dress and sitting quietly on the bed. She was wearing a red hijab and her face could not be seen clearly, but her convex and concave figure was clearly exposed under the wedding dress. Dongnu's mother was sitting beside the bed, reaching out and gently touching the back of Dongnu's hand. Seeing me coming, she quickly stood up and closed the door. Then he grabbed my hand and came to the cave girl. I found a scarlet slap mark on her face. It seemed that she had been severely beaten after returning home. She put my hand on the cave girl's, and then held our hands tightly. The cave girl noticed my arrival, pulled off the hijab on her head, and looked at me stupidly. The dirt on the cave girl's face has been cleared away, revealing her snow-white skin, her eyes as dazzling as stars, her small and exquisite nose, and her rosy lips like two pale red petals that are opening. The mother of the cave girl reached out and caressed her daughter's cheek, then looked at me and said, "Son, my daughter will be taken care of by you from now on. You must find a way to take her out of here." When she said this, her eyes were red and tears were rolling in her eyes. Seeing this scene, I couldn't help but feel sorry for this mother and daughter. They must have encountered a lot of hardships in this village. "Okay, I'll take her out of here." Dongnu's mother smiled at me, and then said to Dongnu, "Fenluan, you must listen to your husband carefully in the future. Mom can see that he is a good person. If you stay with him, he will treat you well." Fenluan just smiled stupidly at his mother. Fenluan's mother stood up and covered her daughter's head with the red hijab again. She said to me, "My child, you must treat her well, she has suffered too much." Fenluan's mother spoke with a bit of sadness in her voice, and a bit of hope in her eyes. I couldn't help but ask, "Have you ever thought about leaving with us?" Fenluan's mother shook her head and said, "After I was sold here, I wanted to leave countless times, but every time I escaped, I was beaten severely." She looked at Fenluan with eyes full of love. "Over time, I gave up the idea of leaving here. My only hope now is that my daughter can be happy." When Fenluan's mother said this, there was a hint of determination in her eyes. But why did I see the consciousness of a dying person in her eyes? "Okay. Take Fenluan away." After saying that, she turned around. I pulled Fenluan and was about to leave, but Fenluan broke away from my hand and ran towards her mother. She hugged her mother, tears falling from the corners of her eyes uncontrollably. "Fenluan, let's go, leave this place and live a good life. This is my mother's last wish for you." I shuddered when I heard this. Once upon a time, my mother also said this to me. For a time, I felt more sympathetic to Fenluan's experience. I stepped forward, gently took Fenluan's hand, and said softly, "Let's go." Fenluan turned back 3 times with each step, looking at her mother reluctantly. When we walked out of the house, we heard the sobs of Fenluan's mother behind us. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 247. When Fenluan heard the cry, she wanted to break free from my hand, but I held her tightly. "Let's go and live a good life so that you can be worthy of your mother." Fenluan shouted towards the room. "Mom." When I hear the word mom, I feel extremely sad. Fenluan got on the sedan chair, and I led the way on horseback. We did not return along the original route, but chose to take a long way back to the Miao Ancestral Hall. This road must pass through the cave where the cave god is. As time passed and the team advanced, the number of people greeting the bride became fewer and fewer. Finally, all the people greeting the bride left, leaving only me, Lin Duyan, and Miao Fenluan. Lin Duyan came to me and said, "You are the grandson of brother Long Lin. There are some things you don't want me to tell you. When you pass by the cave later, you will personally send the cave girl into the cave, because this is the only way for the cave girl, only then will the soul come back." I nodded and continued riding forward. As we walked, the atmosphere around us became a little depressing. It feels like there are countless pairs of eyes staring at you in the dark. At this moment, a dark wind blows, and noisy voices are heard in your ears. At first glance, these voices seem to be ringing in your mind. Lin Duyan quickly took out a handful of yellow paper from his backpack and handed it to me, saying, "We have encountered a ghost. If you throw these yellow papers out, they will get the money and leave naturally. If the wedding is scheduled at night, there is a high chance that you will encounter wild ghosts blocking your way. These lonely ghosts will choose to follow the wedding party or block your way. If you don't give them some benefits at this time, they won't leave. In serious cases, you may encounter evil spirits trying to steal your marriage. I threw away the yellow paper in my hand. Yellow paper was flying all over the sky. As the yellow paper fell to the ground, the noisy voices in my ears were reduced a lot. I continued riding forward, and when I passed a corner, a shrill Suana sound rang through the night sky. Hearing the Suana, Lin Duyan's face turned very ugly, and he shouted, "Oh no! We encountered a fierce ghost who stole our marriage." As soon as he finished speaking, white mist swirled around the corner not far away, and everything was wrapped in white mist in an instant. I'm really afraid of what will happen. Just now I was praying in my heart that I wouldn't encounter a vicious ghost to steal my marriage. But now I happen to encounter it. Hee hee hee. Suddenly, the sound of children playing around came from around the corner. The next moment, two small shadows jumped around the corner. They were a boy and a girl. The two boys and girls wore braids that reached the sky and wore bright red clothes. They looked very happy. However, the bright red clothes were in sharp contrast to their pale skin. The corners of their mouths were raised, they were smiling, and they were playing and walking towards me. Immediately afterwards, several pairs of boys and girls came out from the corner. They were dressed exactly like the two just now, but they looked different and had creepy smiles on their faces. Soon, these boys and girls came to me, then dispersed, walking around the sedan chair towards the nursery rhyme. I condensed my expression and looked at these brats coldly. Just when I was about to take action, the sound of Suana in my ears suddenly became louder, and then out of the white mist around the corner, fierce ghosts with different looks came out. These fierce ghosts have pale faces, are dressed cheerfully, and have deep smiles on their faces. Surrounded by all the ghosts, a fierce ghost rode out from behind them, followed by a sedan chair. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 248. Li Gui's facial features were exquisite and his face was handsome. Apart from his pale face and sinister eyes, he really looked like a handsome young man. Apart from Lin Duyan and Miao Fengluan, there were only 4 villagers carrying sedan chairs. When they saw this scene, their bodies trembled and their legs couldn't help but swing. Several boys and girls gathered around the sedan chair, singing immature and eerie nursery rhymes, which made people's hair stand on end and break out in cold sweat. One of the boys suddenly stretched out his hand to lift the curtain of the sedan chair. When I saw this scene, I jumped off the horse and hit the boy with a 9-fold thunderbolt. With a bang, thunder and lightning exploded, and the kid was blown away by me. Seeing this, the little ghosts around me dispersed and hugged each other, looking at me with fearful expressions. The kid who had just been hit by my thunderbolt became a little transparent. I still spared this blow. If I hadn't, I'm afraid this kid would have died long ago. Get away, I said coldly to them. The little devil subconsciously took a step back. At this moment, a dark wind suddenly blew up behind me, and a powerful yin energy hit me from behind. I hold Lei Ju in my hand, and when I turn around I give it a palm. Blue lightning shot out of my hands like sparks in the dark night. Li Gui was not affected in any way. He looked at me coldly, and the yin energy emanating from his body was as rich as water. My first level thunderbolt was unable to hurt him at all. I condensed my expression and stacked the 9 levels of Thunder Ju to the second level. Suddenly, the air began to shake slightly, and there was even thunder. Li Gui's expression froze, and the corner of his mouth raised a hint of teasing. Is that the only extent? When Li Gui said this, his brows furrowed. I could tell that the second level of Thunder Ju was still something he could handle. But how could I do it with just this little trick? I activated the soul-stealing bloody hand. Scarlet blood began to spread from his right arm, and after a moment, the entire right arm was covered in blood. When Li Gui saw the changes on my arm, his expression instantly became extremely serious. What's this? A sneer rose from the corner of my mouth, and the scarlet blood instantly soaked through Leju, and the blood-red color suddenly reflected in my eyes. The frequency of the air trembling became faster and faster. Li Gui looked frightened and wanted to withdraw his hand, but it was already too late. The bloody thunder arcs were like pythons climbing up the ghost's body. Ah! Li Gui screamed, his body trembling crazily, and he yelled at me in horror, "What are you doing? Something that will kill you." Although this fierce ghost is very strong, in his spiritual state, he was a little panicked when facing the bloody hand. He quickly calmed down, shouted loudly, and the yin energy around him solidified. Then I felt a huge yin energy blowing me away. Li Gui quickly distanced himself from me. I covered my right arm and roared heartbreakingly. The places where he was touched by the bloody thunder began to fester, turning into little stars and disappearing into the night. This is the ability of the soul-stealing bloody hand, which can directly hit the soul. I activated the power of the ghost seal, and suddenly, a bone-chilling chill spread throughout my body. As soon as the power of the ghost seal appeared, all the ghosts looked frightened and backed away. Lin Du saw the scene and asked in surprise, "Boy, you actually..." I didn't want to show my strength in front of Lin Duyan, because this guy is not a good bird. But the current situation is special. I looked at these evil ghosts and said coldly, "I'll give you a chance." I waved my hand casually, and the underworld appeared out of thin air. The next moment, the door to the underworld slowly opened, and a burst of extremely cold air burst out from the door, making the surrounding bushes rustle. Seeing this scene, those fierce ghosts gathered in front of the male ghost and prayed, "Sir, please, let my young master go." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 249. The Ghost Master struggled to stand up, pushed the ghosts away, and shouted, "When will it be your turn to plead for me, Master? Master?" Master Gui glared at them fiercely and said coldly, "Shut up." The ghosts retreated one after another, the worry in their eyes not diminishing. Master Gui looked at me coldly. He stretched out his hand, pointed at the sedan chair behind me, and said word for word, "You must keep her here today. She can't marry you." Master Gui's words were so decisive that people couldn't help but suspect that if I refused, he would definitely die with me. I didn't want to talk nonsense with this guy, so I picked up Leju again and approached Master Ghost. Master Gui glanced at the Thunder Ju in my hand with some fear. He condensed his yin qi again and recovered the damage just caused by Thunder Ju. The atmosphere dropped to freezing point again. I know in my heart that this guy in front of me is difficult to deal with. The reason why I was able to hurt him just now was because I was unexpected. If he were to use the bloody thunder technique now, he would definitely be on guard. This will make me passive. Just when we were about to take action, a beautiful figure stood in front of me. Miao Fengluan opened her arms to protect me behind her. Master Gui paused and looked at Miao Fengluan with some confusion. He said, "Fengluan, come with me. I will take you out of here." His voice was not as cold as before, but a little more gentle. After hearing this, Miao Fengluan's little head shook like a rattle. "No. No." Miao Fengluan turned around, pointed at me and said, I like him." Young Master Gui was stunned and shouted excitedly, "You just met him a few times and you already like him. What if he wants to harm you?" Miao Fengluan's eyebrows were not furrowed, as if she was thinking about how to explain to Master Gui, and then she stammered and repeated, I like him." Master Gui was stunned for a moment, and a wry smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Immediately, his expression turned a little cold and became extremely determined. "Whether you like him or not, I'm going to take you away." I can't possibly hand you over to anyone else. Miao Fengluan shook his head repeatedly, stretched out his hand and touched his chest, then came to himself and touched my chest. He said word for word, Fengluan likes him, really likes him. Miao Fengluan smiled stupidly at me. After hearing this, Master Gui looked a little dull, and finally let out a long sigh and said, okay, whatever you say is what it is, but I have to follow him to make sure he doesn't hurt you. Miao Fengluan showed an innocent smile to Master Gui, then opened her legs and wanted to run in front of Master Gui. I quickly took Miao Fengluan's hand. Miao Fengluan smirked and said, he's very good. I looked at the innocent smile on Miao Fengluan's face and let go of her hand. Miao Fengluan trotted up to Master Gui Xiao, took Master Gui's hand and ran towards me. Then she handed the hand holding Master Ghost to me. Shake hands and we are good friends. Master Gui and I looked at each other, both of us turned our faces to the side and snorted coldly. Hold it. Hold it. Then Miao Fengluan took my hand and shook it gently with Master Gui. Then Miao Fengluan clapped her hands happily on the side, looking like a 4 or 5-year-old child. The Ghost Master turned around and glanced at his servants, pointed at the gate of the underworld and said, let's go. The ghosts were stunned for a moment, then they all fell to their knees and begged the Ghost Master, no. We want to stay with the Master. Always serve the Master. A wry smile appeared on Master Gui's lips, he shrugged helplessly and said, let's go. Since the great changes happened in my family, you are no longer my servants. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 250. When the ghosts heard this, they kowtowed to the Ghost Master. Master. We won't leave. We want to stay by your side forever. Yes. Master. No matter what happens, you are our master. We will not leave. Master, if it weren't for you, we would have died long ago. These ghost servants kept pleading to Master Ghost, but the look in Master Ghost's eyes did not change at all. Shut up. Stop talking. I will only say it once. If you don't listen, don't blame me for being ruthless. When Mr. Gui said this, his tone was as cold as ice. On the side of me, my hair stood on end. Seeing that these ghost servants were still so stubborn, the Ghost Master no longer hesitated. He made a hand seal with his hands, the yin qi solidified, and a huge black magic circle appeared from under the ghost servants. I was shocked when I saw this scene. How come ghosts can also use spells? At this moment, I suddenly felt a tingling sensation between my eyebrows, and a golden light burst out from my forehead. Master Ghost noticed this beam of golden light, turned around suddenly, his expression condensed, and he said in great surprise, the inheritance of Tianfu City God. The stinging pain in my eyebrows got bigger and bigger, and my whole body began to tremble uncontrollably. My legs became weak and I was about to fall to my knees. Miao Fengluan saw the scene and quickly supported me. After the Ghost Master was surprised for a while, he turned around and said to the ghost servants, since you don't want to leave, don't blame my men for being ruthless. The color of the black magic circle began to shrink, and the ghost servants were still pleading. The Ghost Master ignored them and waved with all his strength. The huge magic circle rose into the air and threw these ghost servants directly into the gate of the underworld. The magic circle dissipated, and the sharp pain between my eyebrows disappeared without a trace. I struggled to stand up and looked at Master Ghost, only to find that he was also looking at me, his eyes full of vigilance. What happened just now? Why does the golden light burst out from between my eyebrows when Master Ghost uses the magic circle? He just seemed to be talking about the inheritance of Cheng Huang. Young Master Ghost walked toward me step by step, and said as he walked, I didn't expect that you were the heir to Tianfu City God, but it seems that you didn't get all the inheritance, and you can't even use the most basic temple skills. This sentence reveals a lot of information. What do you mean? I asked. Master Gui was stunned and asked in disbelief, "You don't even know what temple magic is?" I shook my head, and Master Gui raised his head proudly, looked at me teasingly, and said, "I thought you were so powerful." I didn't say anything. Master Gui, this ghost, had a strange character. He took advantage of my lack of understanding of temple arts and started to make a big fuss. But what he said next also gave me a lot of information. There were originally 3 major city god temples in this world: Huashan City God, Shangyuan City God, and Jingmen City God. These 3 Chenghuang temples have been inherited for thousands of years, and their heritage is so rich that it is unimaginable. The Tianfu City God is a rising star. It has been passed down for hundreds of years, and its heritage can rival the other 3 city gods. These are the 4 major city gods temples in the world. I don't know much about the history of the city god temple, and this is the first time I've heard about the 4 major city gods. Young Master Ghost continued, "Temple magic is a vital part of the city god's inheritance. Although you have inherited the inheritance from the Tianfu city god, you can't use the temple magic. It's really sad." Hearing this, I was not surprised at all. I know what Tianfu city god is like. He is just using me. Seeing my expressionless face, Master Gui felt a little angry. He snorted coldly and stood next to Miao Fengluan.